I paired Jimmy Butler against Andrew Wiggins. Now let me pair Draymond Green. I remind you, before I play this Draymond Green sound, this was a quote from Jimmy Butler less than 30 days ago. San Francisco Chronicle, quote, all that noise and chaos paid off in a major way. Everything starts off great, but then you know someone has to be the bad guy, and it gets to be me. I'm always the one doing something unbearable all of a sudden, but being here, they've only got one goal. Ain't no hidden agendas. End quote. So
that's ironic.
I think Draymond here speaks to the idea of perhaps not hidden agendas, but not everyone in Golden State has the same agenda.
I think everybody was committed to winning and doing that any way possible. And right now, it doesn't feel that way.
I mean, is it personal agenda type stuff, or like, I mean, I guess how would you kind of?
I think everyone has a personal agenda in this league, but you have to make those personal agenda work in the team confines. And if it doesn't work, then you kind of got to get rid of your agenda, or eventually the agenda is the cause of someone getting rid of you.
This is actually a very intelligent quote about the dynamics of basketball and the NBA in particular, right? Basketball is five people trying to do their own thing, but trying to do it within the framework of we do it together as a team.
And this particular person, say what you will about him selfishly, does all of the things no one else wants to do on a basketball court. So no matter what you think of Draymond Green, is speaking from a position of authority of what it is it takes to be a good teammate when you are someone like him who once scored 32 points in a Game 7 of the finals.
Yeah, I think Draymond, more than any player that has problems that they always talk about, like, oh, he has a temper issue, whatever, he always plays the right way. Like his basketball decision-making, he doesn't take dumb shots. He doesn't, make wild passes for the most part. He's pretty astute at keeping his temper separate from his basketball decision-making. What he's talking about there is absolutely correct. Everybody in the NBA has an agenda. No one's out here walking out here like, I just want selflessness. Everyone's got some sort of goal, but the idea is how do we make it all work within the same framework? It's not communism, right, where we're just everyone is an equal robot, but it's also not a free-for-all kind of laissez-faire free market economy where everyone's just doing whatever the hell they want. There is a level of kind of capitalistic tendencies within a socialist framework when you talk about basketball. And so what he's saying there is sometimes you want to do things and they help us win, and sometimes you want to do things and these things detract from our winning. And the idea is to minimize that and maximize the other.
He is an authority here, correct? Like he's viewed as a bad messenger because he's got a temper problem, but he's an authority. They've won championships with him as the furnace and fuel of play basketball correctly.
And this is going to be a bad time. Keeping people accountable to that, holding people accountable to that, right? Because that's really what this is about, right? When they're talking, first of all, we know these guys, they're not passive-aggressive people. So I'm pretty sure whoever they're talking about, it's not like, what, me? Like, they know already.
Jeremy's looking at you sideways. Do you think that Jimmy is passive-aggressive?
I mean, did you witness the last year?
I think he's aggressive.
Jeremy, when Jimmy doesn't like somebody, does he keep it to himself?
He doesn't keep it to himself to them, so that's fair that he wouldn't be passive aggressive within the locker room. But it's what the words are in front of the media certainly are to specifically influence things. You could argue to an agenda.
Certainly. But my point is this. Whoever they're talking about, yes, they're speaking in a passive-aggressive tone to the media, right. But the person they're talking about has already received this message directly.
No, that's right. Throughout they're talking about Kuminga. Throughout the history of Jimmy Butler's career, he finds a guy that he creates a cause around. Yep. And that's the reason why that approach is why we're not right. In Chicago, he and Wade went off to their side, and Rondo rallied the young guys, and that was the schism. In Minnesota, Wiggins and Cat, these young guys, he finds these people. Down here, when Lowry got on the team and those two isolated, and he had a problem with Tyler Hero, and God bless Kevin Love for being the tie that binds.
He was.
And brought those guys together for a little run. But he had his problems with Tyler and probably Bam a little bit. And now he's done it again. He's done it again. Duncan was also in that crew. That's why he loved Max Strus. He was so effusive in his praise of Max Strus. He knew what he was doing. Let's turn the two white guys against one another. That's what he was doing.
The thing about
the white shooters, get them.
About Max is like Jimmy often does pick the right guys to be his guys. Right? He wants the gamers, and Max is one of those guys. And I can understand.
The guy sucks.
Well, but that's part of it, right? Like there are personal relationships, and then there are the guys that he singles out. He really, like over here in Golden State, he loves Buddy Hield, and he wanted to build up Buddy Hield. And I don't know whether or not that works out for them, but when he picks guys, it's with a specific reason of I think I can build you up. Over here, for that matter, he picked Niko Jovic because he wanted him to maximize what he had going on. But he definitely distanced himself from others. And when you're a leader of a team, you have to sink yourself into the human beings on your team to get the most out of them. That's what I think Bam was most frustrated with when you look at the dynamics in that locker room. Bam, a guy who wants to sink himself into others. You see Khalil Ware have a bad game. Bam's in his ear, 20 rebounds the next night. And that's the type of leadership that I think is different. It doesn't mean he can't get the most out of his teammates, but it's different with Jimmy.
And ultimately, when you talk about leadership, effective leadership, it's adjusting your leadership style to the person you're dealing with. Steve Kerr talks about this. He says, I coach Draymond different than I coach other people. Like with Draymond, at first I was trying to be like the new age 21st century, hey man, talk to me about your feelings. And he realized pretty quickly from talking to Draymond and talking to Tom Izzo, no, Draymond just wants you to cuss him out and call him on his bull and be up in his face and scream and be like a domineering coach. That's what he responds to. But that doesn't mean Steve Kerr is going to coach Brandon Podziemski or Buddy Hield or Jonathan Kuminga the same way, because those guys have different receptors as far as the message. And it's on the leader to adjust it, because at the end of the day, it's not the most important thing isn't that I get to communicate the way I want to. The most important thing is the message gets communicated.
The schisms you guys talk about, again and again, what has happened with Jimmy Butler, we really celebrated old school around here, and you realize there's a generation of difference between however it is that Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade were behaving in Chicago, or how Jimmy Butler interacted with younger people in Minnesota, or in the instance that we're talking about here where you're singling out Kuminga. It's a generation of difference in attitude.
I will say, though, I think he's right in the people that he's identifying in terms of people that aren't necessarily doing the things necessary to help the team, even though his own actions, especially when they meet real adversity, kind of also work against the team's interests.
Right. Like, so the idea is like, yes, he's never like misidentifying the guy who's not pulling their weight. But how do you get them to pull their weight? Do you go off on them and then just ignore them for the rest of the time? Like, that's not an effective strategy. You're trying to build them up to get to that place. I think Karl Anthony Towns is an example of what he was in Minnesota and what he is now has grown. Players grow, players change, and Jimmy seems to have a way of kind of like, you're either here or there, and once you're on one side or the other, that's it.
Are you guys with me on the idea, though, that we really celebrated 35-year-old Jimmy Butler from a different time, lumberjack guy, when he was undressing 20-year-old cat who was not yet a grown adult because he came out of Kentucky as a freshman? And
undressing is bad.
You understand what I'm saying, though. Jimmy Butler, with 13 years of difference, is going to have what connection point with whatever Karl Anthony Towns is, at that size, being the best shooter from the perimeter he's ever seen, while Jimmy's getting 16 free throws a game.
Look, I'm like Jeremy said, I'm not saying it's bad, right? Like especially in the context of Golden State, Draymond and any of those guys, when they do it, it's real. One of my favorite stories, I don't even remember if this was public or not, but when what's the kid in Philadelphia? Now I'm drawing a blank.
Maxey?
McCain?
No, the one that was in Golden State, Oubre. When Kelly Oubre was in Golden State.
Oh.
And Clay was starting to come back, and they were talking about, okay, so Kelly, you're going to come off the bench. And Kelly started pounding. I'm a starter. And I think it was Clay that went, or someone went off on him in the locker room, telling him, hey, man, you know what this place is? Do you know what we do here? Who are you to say I'm not coming off the bench? Andre Iguodala, who was an all-star, came off the bench for us. Who the hell are you? That's the type of locker room they are. They don't suffer the kind of the immaturities of fools. They will let you know immediately. And so what they're doing here, I'm not even certain. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not holding them accountable. The thing is, the only reason why we're talking about it here and why it's relevant to us is because that part of Jimmy, which can be useful at times, but other times destructive, was at the end of the time here just destructive.
Right.
It was no longer useful.
I think that the valid criticism of Jimmy is when he does identify that guy, he does very little actually mend the fences. And it doesn't seem like there's really a path for the person that he's isolated in that way to work themselves back into the good graces.
And then the juxtaposition of why we're talking about it specifically now is when you hear Wiggins and Norm Powell and all these guys talk, and it's like, oh, this feels amazing. But on some level, Jeremy, you know why it feels amazing? Because they appreciate it. Yes. In a way that some other locker rooms, if you tried doing this kumbaya stuff, it would be taken for granted. And that's the problem in the NBA. You're always balancing, hey, we want people accountable, but also we don't want it to feel like a prison. But if you let it too loose, everyone's going to do whatever they want.
All I'm saying is the vibes in Golden State look like and the vibes here in Miami about to take it tonight, second half of that home and home. Everybody's having a good time. You see that real leader, Norman Powell? That's a leader right there.
All right, so
that's a leader.
I told y'all about Norman Powell.
Let's